It all began in the 18th century, when the 13 British colonies in North America were thriving yet increasingly discontent with British rule. They had grown prosperous, independent in spirit, and resistant to the heavy-handed control of a distant king. For years, they had enjoyed a degree of autonomy, but as Britain tightened its grip, resentment boiled over. The seeds of revolution were sown not in battle, but in policies, taxes, and a growing sense of betrayal. The French and Indian War, fought between 1754 and 1763, had left Britain with a massive debt. Looking to its colonies for revenue, the British government imposed a series of taxes, beginning with the Sugar Act of 1764, which placed duties on molasses and other goods. Then came the Stamp Act of 1765, requiring colonists to pay for an official stamp on all printed materials. The backlash was immediate. Colonists protested, arguing that they were being taxed without representation in Parliament. The phrase, "no taxation without representation," became their rallying cry. In response to the growing unrest, Britain sent more troops to enforce its laws, further inflaming tensions. The Townshend Acts of 1767 imposed new duties on glass, paper, and tea. Resistance grew stronger. The Sons of Liberty, a secret organization led by figures like Samuel Adams, organized boycotts and demonstrations. Then, in 1770, British soldiers fired into a crowd of colonists in Boston, killing 5. The event, later called the Boston Massacre, became a powerful symbol of British tyranny. The situation escalated further in 1773 when Britain passed the Tea Act, allowing the British East India Company to sell tea directly to the colonies at a lower price, but still taxed. In December of that year, the Sons of Liberty staged the Boston Tea Party, dumping an entire shipment of British tea into Boston Harbor in defiance of the tax. In retaliation, Britain enacted the Coercive Acts, known in the colonies as the Intolerable Acts, which closed Boston's port, restricted town meetings, and allowed British officials accused of crimes to be tried in England. Furious, representatives from the colonies convened in 1774 at the First Continental Congress in Philadelphia, seeking to address grievances and push back against British rule. They sent a petition to King George III, hoping for reconciliation. Instead, the king dismissed their concerns and sent more troops. By April 1775, tensions erupted into violence. British soldiers marched to Concord to seize colonial weapons, only to be met by armed militia in Lexington. The first shots of the American Revolution were fired, marking the beginning of an all-out war for independence. The early battles were chaotic and uncertain. Colonial militias, though determined, were poorly equipped and trained compared to the mighty British Army. But the desire for freedom burned deep. In 1776, the Second Continental Congress convened, with leaders like John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Jefferson arguing that the time had come to declare independence. On July 4, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was signed, formally severing ties with Britain and proclaiming that all men were created equal, endowed with unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The war raged on. George Washington, appointed as commander of the Continental Army, faced immense challenges. His troops suffered shortages of supplies, food, and even basic necessities. But Washington's leadership was unmatched. His strategic retreats kept his army alive, and his bold moves, like the surprise attack on Hessian forces in Trenton on Christmas night in 1776, boosted morale and kept the fight alive. Britain had expected the rebellion to be crushed quickly. Instead, they found themselves embroiled in a grueling war of attrition. The vast American wilderness, unfamiliar to British troops, became a weapon for colonial fighters who used guerrilla tactics, striking swiftly and disappearing into the forests. In 1777, the Battle of Saratoga became a turning point. The American victory convinced France to formally ally with the colonies, providing much-needed military support, supplies, and financial aid, with French ships disrupting British supply lines and soldiers reinforcing Washington's army. The tide of war shifted. Yet, the struggle was far from over. In the South, brutal battles raged. and the British attempted to exploit Loyalist support. Cities like Charleston fell, but American fighters like Nathanael Greene and Francis Marion waged relentless campaigns, harassing British forces and making occupation nearly impossible. In 1781, the final decisive confrontation occurred in Yorktown, Virginia. British General Cornwallis, expecting reinforcements by sea, found himself trapped by Washington's troops on land and the French Navy at sea. After weeks of bombardment, Cornwallis surrendered. The war was effectively over. The Treaty of Paris was signed in 1783, officially recognizing the independence of the United States. The American Revolution had transformed the world. It wasn't just about breaking free from Britain, it was about the idea that people had the right to govern themselves. The principles of the revolution would inspire future movements for democracy and independence across the globe. But for those who had fought, bled, and sacrificed, it was a hard-won victory, a testament to the power of perseverance and the unyielding pursuit of freedom. The journey of the United States had only just begun. A new nation, built on the ideals of liberty and self-governance, would now face the challenge of shaping its destiny in an uncertain world. As the war ended, the task of building a new nation began. The United States faced enormous challenges. The Articles of Confederation, the first attempt at government, proved too weak to handle the needs of a growing country. The new nation struggled with debt, internal disputes, and foreign threats. The lack of a strong central authority made it difficult to enforce laws, raise funds, or unify the states. It became clear that change was needed. In 1787, delegates from the states gathered in Philadelphia to draft a new constitution. The Constitutional Convention was filled with debates over how power should be balanced between the federal government and the states. The result was the United States Constitution, a groundbreaking document that established a system of checks and balances, divided power between three branches of government, and created a framework for democracy that would endure for centuries. One of the most critical aspects of the new Constitution was the Bill of Rights, added in 1791 to guarantee fundamental freedoms such as freedom of speech, religion, and the right to a fair trial. These principles would shape the identity of the young nation and set an example for democratic movements around the world. The ratification of the Constitution marked the birth of the United States as a fully realized, independent country with a government of its own making. The first president, George Washington, took office in 1789, setting many of the precedents that future leaders would follow. His leadership helped stabilize the nation, establish economic policies, and navigate the complex relationships with foreign powers. He refused to seek a third term, reinforcing the idea that power should not remain in the hands of one person for too long, a principle that became a cornerstone of American democracy. But the challenges of the young republic were far from over. The Revolutionary War had left deep scars, and tensions between different factions threatened national unity. The rise of political parties, conflicts with Native American tribes, and disputes over the economy tested the strength of the new government. Still, the United States survived and continued to grow, expanding westward and shaping its identity as a land of opportunity and self-determination. The impact of the American Revolution extended beyond its borders. The ideas of liberty, democracy, and self-rule inspired other revolutions, most notably the French Revolution of 1789. The success of the American colonies against the powerful British Empire proved that determined people could overthrow tyranny and establish their own government. Nations across Europe and Latin America looked to the American Revolution as a model for their own struggles for independence, yet, the ideals of the Revolution did not immediately translate to freedom for all. Slavery remained a deeply entrenched institution, contradicting the very principles of liberty and equality that the war had been fought for. Women, too, were largely excluded from political rights. Despite their significant contributions to the war effort, the fight for true equality would take generations, leading to future movements for abolition, civil rights, and women's suffrage. Despite its imperfections, the American Revolution was a defining moment in human history. It was more than just a war, it was a radical transformation of political thought, proving that government should be accountable to the people it serves. It established a republic based on democratic ideals, inspiring countless others to pursue freedom and self-determination. The revolution also had lasting effects on military strategy, governance, and national identity. The guerrilla tactics used by colonial fighters influenced future warfare. The decentralized government structure influenced political theory. The stories of revolutionaries like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Alexander Hamilton became legendary, shaping the American identity for centuries to come. As time passed, the United States continued to evolve, facing new conflicts, internal divisions, and moments of triumph. The Revolutionary War may have ended in 1783, but the battle to uphold its ideals continued. Every generation has faced the question, how do we preserve and protect the freedoms that were won through such immense sacrifice? The American Revolution was not just about breaking free from Britain, it was about creating something entirely new. It was about proving that a government of the people, by the people, and for the people could succeed. It was about laying the foundation for a nation that, despite its flaws, would become a beacon of democracy and hope for the world. More than 2 centuries later, its legacy remains alive. The struggle for liberty, justice, and equality continues. The lessons of the revolution remind us that freedom is not guaranteed, it must be defended, nurtured, and fought for in every era. And as history unfolds, the spirit of 1776 serves as a reminder of what is possible when people refuse to accept tyranny and dare to shape their own destiny.